into the dyno room. So just from the front, I guess, yeah, we have twin 88 millimeter Zonorotor. I think they're like GT45s. They built them for us custom to try and save us some space, but give us that same compressor profile. So those are a pair of 88s that are then feeding into the tubes to the inner stage, or stage 1 to stage 2 charge air heat exchanger, which is a twin Garrett 1000 horsepower core intercooler stage. And you can see that we have the associated pressure and temperature measurements on the inlet side and the outlet side, so we can measure the efficiency of that intercooler core and also have some idea of what the temperature and pressure is leading into the stage 2 turbocharger, which in this case would be what would normally just be the single GT55 turbocharger that is feeding the engine. So if you want to think of it this way, I mean, honestly, the easiest way to explain what's going on here is that we've taken a turbocharged engine that was complete with a single GT55 charge air heat exchanger, and obviously the engine sitting back in there. It's almost the smallest piece of the whole deal. And we've basically put a twin turbo kit on top of it. So the air obviously comes into the twin 88 Zonorotors, out of there into the charge air heat exchanger, into the compressor of the GT55, out of the compressor of the GT55 into the second charge air heat exchanger, into the engine. On the way out, it's exactly the opposite. So the exhaust gas goes into the turbine of the GT55 first, like it would on a normal engine, and then exits the GT55, and all of the exhaust that either bypasses through those two wastegates on the entrance to the GT55, all of that exhaust energy is then fed into the manifold that runs the two turbines on the two Zonorotor 88s. And then there's another pair of wastegates there, which would be that guy and that guy, which then bypass around the turbines on the Zonorotor turbos and go out into atmosphere. And obviously then the two Zonorotor turbines, they also dump to atmosphere as well. So I'll go around into the dyno room now, and we'll kind of look at some of the piping that our friend JT Oliver had to try to figure out how to fit. So the first thing we had to do was try to find a way to make it fit in the dyno room. So you could see that we sort of took some liberty with that, and you're not going to want to really have to walk around this side of the engine if you don't want to have to. This is obviously the hot part. So expanding on what I was talking about on the exhaust side, this is the same header, primary tube anyway, that we run on the single turbo setup that would go into the collector that then feeds into the turbine housing down there on the GT55. This is a different collector that we run, obviously, with a pair of tile 60 millimeter, they're V60D wastegates on it, and then the exhaust of those two wastegates, which would be normally on the single turbo setup, this would go to atmosphere, but we want to take all that exhaust energy and use it for the stage 1 turbochargers. So all of that is piped in through this Y, right, and it comes back into this big tube, which is really the downpipe of the GT55. Right, so we add all of the wastegate flow and what comes out of the turbine of the GT55 stage 2 turbo, and it then has a split that goes to wastegate number 1 and this tube over here, wastegate number 2, as well as this is the Y for the stage 1 compressor 1 turbine inlet, and the stage 1 compressor 2 turbine inlet is there. So all the exhaust through the GT55 or bypassing it through these two wastegates. Now, we get away with one wastegate when we run a single stage GT55. Why do we need to run two wastegates? Well, the reality of it is that the amount of exhaust gas that will be exiting the engine with a compound setup, if we're running, some say 100 pounds of boost, we've got enough energy there potentially to make 2,200 horsepower worth of exhaust flow. That's gonna overrun that GT55 and make basically too much boost. So we need to have a lot more exhaust flow area around the stage 2 turbocharger so we can control the second stage speed. So the idea with the compound turbocharger setup is that the turbochargers, when they are run in series, multiply each other. So conceptually, we should be able to reach, let's just say we made with a single stage turbo yesterday, in this engine we made 2,000 horsepower, it took 80 pounds of boost. So we would expect it to still take 80 pounds of boost to make 2,000 horsepower because that's what the engine requires. We could potentially have some increased efficiency of the turbocharger system at 80 pounds of boost, where we might have less back pressure that the engine actually sees. Because when the turbochargers are multiplying each other's output, each set of turbochargers or each stage of turbochargers only thinks it's going to have to make about, you know, what would be about 22 pounds of boost normally. So basically it's one number times the other. So just to make it simple, if we were to run these compressors, and that would be the idea of the interstage control as well, is that we can run the compressors at the exact same pressure ratio and run them right up the center of their efficiency maps or compressor maps. So again, the idea would be like if the first set of turbos, the Zonal Rotor 88s, were to run at a 3-to-1 pressure ratio, that would be 30 pounds of boost on a gauge, right? And that atmospheric pressure would then be fed into the second stage GT55. At 30 pounds, so it's starting at 3-to-1 over atmospheric. And then if it then multiplies 3-to-1, we have 3 times 3 or 9. We have 9 times atmosphere worth of boost. But you can see that each stage only thinks it's multiplying by 3. So the engine receives 9 and it acts like an engine that gets 9 times atmosphere. But each turbo section only has to do 3 times atmosphere worth of work. So the turbines need to have as much energy going through them, so you need to bypass a lot more, which is what all of the wastegates are about. And we have, yes, it looks like a tile ad. We have a tile V-band housing on the GT55, and we have tile wastegates mounted everywhere, but that's because we know tile and we know that they're going to work for what we're trying to do. The other thing is that I know these V60s are set up for CO2 pressure control, and they have a really light spring in them. So I don't have the experience. I've only done one compound setup, and that was a Hayabusa. So I don't have the experience to know exactly which parts we do or don't need. We're certainly not the first person to ever consider trying a compound setup. We are one of the first to try it in a drag race setup. Some of our friends in Australia, like Colin Wilshire, has a compound turbo setup that he runs in his drag race car, and we are inspired by that. But when I said that we wanted to try to do something that no one's ever done before, I guess what I meant was we want to try to go to the limit of what we can make. So we already know we can make 2,000 horsepower with one turbo. We're not looking for 2,000 horsepower. We're going to find the limit of either the engine or the system, or we may find that we have a major calculation error. But what we're trying to do here is not something that's uncommon or has never been tried. It's been done very successfully, even with more than 2 stages, up to 3 or 4 stages in diesel and tractor pull engines since the early 70s. So this is not new technology. It might be something that import drag racing hasn't seen much of before. It does exist, but this is the first time we're trying it. And when I said we're going to try and do something no one's ever done, we're going to try to make a power number with a 4-cylinder that no one's ever made. So we might succeed, we might not. But the cool part is that we've got our mutual benevolent benefactor who is allowing us to give it a shot just to prove the concept. If it works, we'll try to stuff it in a race car of some sort at some point. If it doesn't work, hey, it was a fun experiment. So that's what we've got going on, and that is the setup of the system. It is a methanol M1 based system. This is exactly from stage 2 turbo, the GT55 inward. This is exactly a copy of what we ran on the dyno yesterday, engine wise. It's the same exact kind of intake manifold. It's the same spec on the engine. The charge air heat exchanger is the same. It's still methanol, same injector, same ignition, same every other thing. So literally this was, how can we as quickly as possible deploy this concept, get it on the dyno just to see if it even works, and can we control it and all of those sorts of things. And then again, after that proves to be functional or not, we decide what to do from that point. And we may decide not to do anything. The guy that's letting us do this is just as happy as if we never run it again as if we decide to move forward with it and turn it into you know, an actual race car. So it's really up to whatever this thing proves to us that it can do and whatever we decide. So that's pretty awesome. Anyway, that's the update for now. The guys are out there trying to fix the fuel pump. So again, we tried to make a pull last night. We got to about 4,800 RPM, saw a fuel leak and stopped. And it's the seal, or somewhere it's leaking between the fuel pump and the oil pump. But on this little engine, it's like, especially with all this stuff on it, I mean, luckily they're on the opposite side. But yeah, everything's on top of itself. And so it's quite a bit of work just to take that off to find out where the leak is. We do have a second fuel pump, so if we have a problem, we can always switch to that one. But yeah, it figures. I want to say last night we made it to 4,800 RPM, and it made about 1.5 pounds of boost, and just north of 125 horsepower. So far, yeah, it's really proven to be well worth the effort and time invested at this point to make 125 horsepower. This is probably $100,000 worth of shit right here to make 125 horsepower with. Oh, look, they're trying to weld out there too while they're working on the fuel system. That's nice. Okay, I better go and help them before they set fire to all my electronics. If you like this video, share it. If you want to follow along with what I'm doing on other projects, you can follow me at Shane Tecklenburg on my Facebook Shane Tecklenburg page, or Tuned by Shane T, Tuned by Shane T on Instagram, Tuned by Shane T on YouTube. And yeah, that's pretty much all we got. Thank you for watching. Please share. Paul Ya, suck it.